Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hey, my friends, we are in recording at the new house, which is very exciting. It feels very exciting. Also feels a little bit echoey currently, but I'm sure that our amazing podcast producer, Scott, will tidy all of that up. But I'm feeling pretty cozy. The move was way harder than I thought it would be as somebody who considers themselves a relatively experienced mover. Not because I love moving house, just an FYI, but army kid, army wife, like I've moved a fair amount of times. And this particular move was a bit of a challenge. The removals company was not ideal. They had not fully understood, I don't think, the scope of the project. And I managed to tear my posterior cruciate ligament lifting heavy boxes on and off moving vans, which made me feel like A, I'm possibly not cut out for a career in removals, and B, the mid-30s are really hitting me hard. So if you are listening to this and you've ever damaged your posterior cruciate ligament, you'll know how much pain I'm in. If you have damaged any other part of your leg, I imagine it's pretty much the same thing. Painful, annoying, and it turns out I'm the world's worst patient. I'm just incredibly impatient about getting better. So if you are listening and you have recommendations for box sets that I should be watching or, good books that I should give a read, please send them through because I'm climbing the walls. Not literally, obviously. I'm very excited that we are finally in the new place, and I'm excited to bring some cool episodes to you guys over the summer. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a catch up on some metrics that I've been tracking recently, because we all know how much I love data. And in this episode, we're getting very into data, which is exciting. It's sales data. It's trends and insights that you will find really useful as you move into the second half of the year and you're starting to think about how you're going to change up your own B2B sales process. But given how much I love data, and obviously I want you to love it too, I want you to be considering throughout this episode what you are currently tracking and how you're using those insights. Because a lot of the time we don't use the insights. We just track the data almost out of habit, and then we end up not using it and it becomes really problematic. So just keep that in the back of your mind throughout this episode and start thinking about how you can inspire yourself, motivate yourself, or just full on force yourself to do a little bit of insights tracking. At the end of June, I actually get to do something super exciting. I'm hosting a virtual retreat for a select group of participants where we are looking at their half year to date, analysing their metrics, going through their performance so far, looking at how they can change the outcomes for the second half of the year or build upon those outcomes. And I'm really, really excited about that because the data gives us the information that we need. And then as a result, we can take the right action. If you love data too, and you haven't been collating your data in your sales process so far, or if you have, but you're not using those insights and you're not really sure what they're telling you, then now is also a really good time to be considering the C-suite and joining us this summer. I'm going to talk about it a little bit over the coming episodes, but if you haven't joined the C-suite yet, we really have got you covered for doing the work this summer that will make the second half of your year the most profitable yet. So if you haven't joined and you've been thinking about it for a while, you've been on the fence, maybe you thought, I'm just going to learn to become a great speaker, or I'm just going to finish authoring that book first, or I'm just going to do X, Y, and Z before I join. there are going to be some big reasons that you are going to want to join the C-suite before August 31st. Just keep that in mind as you listen across the summer and start thinking about where you really want your business to go in 2024 and in 2025 and beyond. If you want to check out the C-suite, you can obviously have a look in the show notes. The link will be right at the top just to make it convenient for you. And let's dig into this episode. Now, like I say, we're going to be looking at some data, some trends, some insights today, and they are all coming from the fantastic sprint that I just finished up with our C-suite participants. Now, I say just finished up. I finished up the sprint at the beginning of May, second week in May. Interestingly, I'm not recording this episode until June. I say just finished up. I, like everybody else, record the data, and that then at a time that I have some headspace and, I'm not moving house, I use those insights and share them with you to help you get better results. Let's just track back. Before we start digging into the numbers, why did I bother doing the sprint and what did I want people to get from it? Now, I always say to you guys on the podcast that I think it's really important to know where you're starting and where you want to go and definitions before we ever dig into an episode, because I think sometimes people can make assumptions about why things are done. And I always just want to make sure that we're on the same page. When I decided that I was going to do the C-suite sprint version, it was actually quite a while ago. I decided back in January that I wanted to do a sprint around the financial new year. And there were a few reasons that fed into that. One was I would have the time to deliver an epic sprint experience. But more importantly, it was decided to do a C-suite sprint because people always have really good intentions at the beginning of a year to take action, to be the most motivated version of themselves that they can be, to put processes and things into place. And then, about 90 days after being the most motivated version of themselves that they can possibly be, it becomes more difficult to hold yourself accountable and keep doing the things. Because the reality of B2B sales is that it is about process and following a very clear process and just doing the things consistently, which isn't sexy. It is not the serotonin, dopamine, excitement, adrenaline fueled kind of activity that perhaps social media selling and things are. And so it becomes quite difficult to stay self-motivated until obviously making a ton of money, in which case, when you're making a ton of money, I will say it's much easier to stay motivated because everyone likes cash. I could have said that less bluntly, couldn't I? But I'm not going to. We are where we are. It's been a tough week of moving. I'm on some high quality painkillers. I think we just need to accept my directness over the next few episodes and back to recording. Why did I bother doing the sprint? Well, I wanted to do the sprint because it was going to be a really good time of the year for increasing motivation for our existing participants. It was a really good opportunity for new participants to bed in good best practice business development habits. And I wanted to set myself a challenge in terms of how quickly I could support participants to see results. Because one of the questions that I get a lot about people joining the C-suite is, how long will it take me to see results? And, up until now, I've had to be like, well, it's kind of like, how long is a piece of string? Are you going to do the work? Et cetera, et cetera. And what we've figured out from the data over the years is that 98% of people who join the C-suite will see their first sale from the C-suite within 6 months or less. But I just wanted to see if we could do it quicker. That's what we started to do with the sprint. Now, obviously, there'll be some of you thinking, but Jess, was this also a good marketing opportunity? I'll be honest, not something I really considered, which is why marketing, not my strong point. But what I did also want to do was give myself some time to spend with participants. I don't know about you guys, but one of the biggest joys in my life is delivery. I really like doing client delivery on my own terms. I will say that, I went through a phase back in sort of 2018, 2019, where I was just delivering too much. I felt like I was always, because I was running a primarily B2C business, I was responsible for other people's results. I felt really like I had to be on all of the time, and that my time wasn't really my own. Like I was working around other people's convenience for their coaching. And sometimes I actually did feel, this is super honest, but I did feel like I was building, 60, 70 businesses, and that I cared more about people's results sometimes than they did. And that didn't feel good for me. Nowadays, because I'm a bit more detached, that's a lot of work on myself, my ego, my attachments, but also because of the way that I structure things these days, it's a real pleasure for me to be able to do client delivery with people, with participants, and have those clear boundaries and scope around what we can achieve together. So for me, less of a marketing exercise and more of a, oh, I get to hang out with people once a week in a group setting and keep people accountable, stay motivated and have fun kind of thing. Take from that what you will. If we're looking at why I did it, some of those reasons were for me, i.e. the fun, the group feel, the getting to get down and dirty with client delivery. And some of those reasons, most of them, were for people who were going to be participating in the sprint results, ultimately, and how quickly they could see results. Let's talk about what those results look like, because over the 6 weeks that I ran the sprint, we did a whole variety of tasks, and the tasks focused on both short and long-term revenue strategies. Now, this is key actually for you if you're listening to this and you are not part of the C-suite and you haven't ever been part of a sales training program, or you have been part of a sales training program, but not one that has talked about short and long-term revenue. It's really, really important that we all understand businesses are not just built on short-term or long-term revenue. Now, as I'm saying that, you're probably thinking, well, duh, like obviously. But actually, if we look at what we are taught in the online marketing space, a lot of it is all focused on one or all focused on the other, which doesn't help, right? So we see a lot of programs that will talk only about cash injections. And the problem with that is that obviously if you're bouncing from cash injection to cash injection, you are probably selling lots and lots of offers, not always at high ticket prices. And that means that it's a lot of content creation, it's a lot of promotion, it's a lot of subjecting your audience to that constant promotion, it's a lot of delivery. It becomes very, very feast and famine, because when you're not doing a cash injection, you're not making money. And then we have some in the online space that talk only about long-term revenue. This is where you start to see conversations about funnels, about high ticket masterminds, longer term coaching packages, retainers if you work in the done for you space. And it's all very focused on these things. And they tend to be sold as like premium long-term experiences, which again, sounds great until you realize that actually you have to deliver that for a very long time. And for most people, particularly if you're a coach, we see it most often in that space or in the done for you service provider space. We don't always tally up how much delivery and how much time we'll spend on client delivery until we're in and delivering it. So we can look at something and go, wow, we just sold a 15K coaching package. But actually it's like, oh, wow, I sold a 15K coaching package, but that includes WhatsApp access and email and a call every week for 6 months and blah, 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 blah. It literally makes me feel overwhelmed just talking about this. But when we talk about building sustainable businesses, we have to accept, and when I talk about sustainable businesses, we're also talking about businesses that sit outside of the online marketing space. We have to focus on both short and long-term revenue. When we're selling to companies, we get to choose what we sell, and the same rules apply. If we only ever focus on short-term or cash injection revenue, we're just bouncing, right? From selling a thing, selling a thing, selling a thing. And that gets draining for you, gets draining for your contacts, your stakeholders. But if we're selling long term in the B2B space, the risk isn't the same or entirely the same as in the B2C world, in that, you get to choose ultimately the scope. So if you're somebody who's selling coaching, for example, to organizations, and you decide you want to give them WhatsApp access and weekly calls or whatever, that would be on you rather than the expectation. But it also means that sometimes what people can fall into is this trap of, I'm only focusing on long-term revenue, that means I'm only going to present the biggest solution ever to prospective clients. And that can be quite overwhelming for the client. If you think about getting on a sales call, and if I'm a stakeholder and I think, oh, well, we've just got this issue with people taking unexpected absence. And then somebody comes in and says, maybe it's because everyone's stressed. I could really, as a prospect, get on board with a stress prevention or a stress management or a burnout prevention type initial solution to support the people who are stressed, or even the people who are managing the people who are stressed. What I'm probably not going to consider is the entire overhaul of our workplace culture, because I don't have any data yet, right? But that's what typically happens when people are thinking about long-term revenue. They go in with these huge solutions to a stakeholder who isn't prepared to have that conversation, doesn't have the data on it, hasn't actually seen you do any work in that space, so hasn't seen any of the quick win results. And it makes it harder to sell, infinitely harder, right? So what we have to do is always have this blend between short-term and long-term revenue for our business. And sometimes that means that we have to focus on selling something that is not ideal. So if we go back to that stress-related example, sometimes that means we have to sell something that meets the client where they're at and gives them a quick win, so that we can build upon that trust and credibility to sell the ultimate or biggest or longest term solution, right? Does this make sense to everybody? I'm saying that like people are going to chorus, yes, of course it does, Jess, back to me. But, hopefully it does. We have to marry that up in our businesses. And when we were completing the C-suite sprint over April and into May, one of the things that I really wanted everybody to focus on, whether they were existing participants inside the C-suite and had been with us for a while, or new participants who'd literally never worked in the C-suite, in the methodology before, was understanding this difference between short and long-term revenue, the importance of it, and then actually using activities, sales activities, that were going to help them generate both short and long-term revenue. Because in your business, that is what you need. You need revenue that you can generate immediately and quickly. And we teach cash injections for corporate companies inside the C-suite and how you can do that. But you also need to understand how to have that predictable revenue stream that you just plug and play, that comes from your cold outreach, that if you send X amount of emails or X amount of LinkedIn requests, or you go to X amount of networking events, you're going to book Y amount of calls. And out of those calls, you're going to be able to send X proposals and sign Z clients at ABC price. That is how a good sales process should run. And so for me, it was really important across the sprint to make sure that people understood the difference and that they could work on activities that would help to generate both of those kinds of opportunities, short and long term. And actually, the data on it was really, really interesting. When we started to look at how people did throughout the sprint, there was some really interesting data that came up. Now, I will say, not everybody who joined specifically to participate in the sprint was able to participate. That happens, right? Life happens. It was also the Easter holidays for part of it, which made it a little bit difficult. But the data itself was really, really impressive. Some of the things that happened over the course of just 6 weeks were, as a collective, the group of participants who went through the sprint booked 116 business development calls in 6 weeks. So they booked and had 116 business development calls in 6 weeks. That doesn't count any of the calls that they did after the sprint. It doesn't count any of the calls that were booked as a result of the sprint, but weren't placed into our accountability data during the sprint. But they booked and had 116 business development calls. Now that is pretty impressive, right? Because most people who join the C-suite are struggling to book 5 business development calls per month, right? So actually it is possible, and anybody who is buying any kind of sales training program for B2B at least should be able to generate qualified business development calls with stakeholders who are the right fit for their area of specialism. And that means the stakeholder who is most interested in your area of specialism and also has control of the budget that will pay you. Okay. So as a collective, our sprint participants booked 116 and had 116 business development calls in 6 weeks, which is phenomenal. They also, as a collective, and I think this is super interesting, sent out 33 proposals for new business. 33. New business, right? That is phenomenal because the amount of work that people were doing were focused on tasks that would take between 45 minutes and 90 minutes per week. So to have 33 proposals go out as a result was incredible. Now, again, you also have to remember that people who buy the C-suite are not just people who have been working with corporates for years and just want to tighten up their sales process a little bit. We have some of those people, but a lot of the people who buy the C-suite are people who have never sold to a corporate before. That is a lot of work to do and achieve in 6 weeks. And again, this is the benefit of having a proven process, isn't it? I think the common theme that I hear quite a lot is, yeah, I'm going to try it first. And then if I can't figure it out on my own, I'm going to come back and then maybe I'll do the C-suite or something later. And you know what? Life happens. Like people get caught up. We all see those courses on Instagram for like £35 that is, go viral overnight. And you buy like 20 of those because they just pop up at 9:30 p.m. or whatever. But the reality is you wouldn't do that in other situations. You wouldn't get diagnosed with heart disease and be like, look, I'm just going to give it a go on my own. Like I'm just going to crack my sternum and have a little root around in there. And then if I can't figure it out, I guess I'll let you have a go, Mr. Cardiac Surgeon or Mrs. Cardiac Surgeon or just cardiac surgeon, right? I know that that's one of these examples that sometimes people find quite extreme, but it is also quite shocking to me the amount of people that I see who would rather spend 6 months to a year trying to figure it out, failing because they're not qualified salespeople, diminishing their self-worth and confidence, and then thinking, I don't know whether I can do this. And even if I do decide to embark on sales training, like it's probably not possible for me because those poor people have damaged their self-worth and confidence so irreparably by that point that actually they've got far more ground to make up in terms of their own confidence and needing additional support. These things are important when we start thinking about how we approach our sales process and how we approach our learning and development. I think the online space certainly over the years has made it very, very difficult for people to point out when the right time is to buy something because we can be conditioned to think, it's sleazy. They just, they're just trying to get as many sales in as possible during a whatever period. But actually, sometimes you have to take a little step back and go, what is it that I want to achieve in my business? Am I investing in the right tools or the right resources or the right support to get there? And for some of you listening, those right tools and resources might actually be about metrics tracking. It might be that you need to improve your use of a CRM system. It might be that you need to be tracking your actual sales, your revenue, the products and services that you're selling so that you can do some analysis on the things that you're most equipped to sell and that are most profitable. It might also be that for some of you listening, you need to think, actually, am I that person who has tried to figure it out, isn't succeeding in the way that I want to, and need to invest in sales training? And maybe that's with me and maybe it's not. Like it really doesn't make any difference. But we need to understand and unpick what we actually need support with, just like we would do with our stakeholders, and be objective about that for ourselves. And then look at, okay, well, how do I go and rectify that? Because what we can't do is be in that kind of misalignment where we're saying to stakeholders every day, oh, well, you've got this problem in your organization. You should really do this to fix it. And then when they don't immediately go, yes, we need to fix that, we should do that with you, blame them, right? If that's what we're doing ourselves in our own businesses, we have to learn to apply the same problem solving, objective consideration of our challenges and our willingness and open-mindedness to go out and find solutions and actually execute on that, right? That's what we looked at in the sprint. And so that was incredibly impressive to watch people who had never sold to corporates before go out and take very specific, very targeted action focused on helping them generate either short or long-term revenue. To see a collective result of 33 proposals being sent out was incredible. That's a really, really spectacular result, which is awesome. And then finally, we came to sales. Now, we had 6 weeks, and actually, it was so lovely because I sent out an email to people who had participated in the sprint and gave them some of this data and said, we recorded over 12 sales in 6 weeks. And those sales included people's first ever corporate sales. So some people actually signed their first ever corporate client in 6 weeks. We had people who sold workshops in 6 weeks. We had people who sold speaking gigs, so keynote speaking, virtual speaking, and obviously in-person speaking, and were paid for all of those things. Just to point out, not free speaking in order to generate clients. They were paid for those events. People who sold associate work, people who sold consultancy work, and we even had people who sold deals at 20K plus in that 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks, they sold things that were worth £20,000 and more, which is a pretty good return on investment on a $2,000 course, right? I sent out this email, I sent it out to these people, and then I had lovely emails back that were like, Jess, I didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to record my data. And actually, I went off and sold this. So I had, 6 or 7 emails. I say 6 or 7. I had 7 emails after that from people who said, I signed up, I did this, I sold something, but then I got caught up in delivering it. So I didn't complete the rest of the sprint, but I did have this sale. So we had 7 other sales, which took us to a grand total recorded of 19 sales in 6 weeks, which I think is incredibly impressive. And since the sprint has been finished, we've also had people who've continued that work. And, they booked business development calls that sat or fell outside of the sprint window. They've gone on to submit proposals for those pieces of work. They've gone on to make sales for those pieces of work. They've gone on, in some cases, to deliver the pieces of work that they'd sold during the sprint and be working repeatedly with that brand new client that they signed just 8 weeks ago. And I think that that is an incredible achievement. I really, really do. And I think it's important that we start talking, I'm certainly going to start talking about it on the podcast more, is this idea that data-driven processes, data-driven sales processes make more money in a much simpler way and, are much better at preventing your own burnout as a business owner. Because certainly after my experiences in LA, and if you haven't listened to the episode I did on the LA wrap up, please do go and have a listen to that. I've been privileged to see the inside of some of the biggest businesses that have the most successful launches. And there are common themes. There are common themes that have been there over the last 3 years where the economy has been challenged. And those big launches are taking more and more work, more and more energy, more and more ad spend. So if you are listening to this and you are running both a B2C and B2B business, and you've noticed that your B2C business is seeing dips in revenue or revenue plateaus that you weren't expecting, that is where the market is at right now. As the cost of living goes up, as the economy continues to be challenged, as people continue to have to weigh up very, very carefully where their disposable income goes, the B2C world becomes ever more competitive, becomes ever more influencer driven, becomes ever more noisy, right? Whereas the B2B world continues on. Continues on in the same way, because companies know that even in times of economic challenge, spending now means that they implement now, which means that they survive now, which means that they thrive a lot later. There are companies that are spending money. There are companies that are spending considerable amounts of money, signing huge contracts. And it really is up to you to be doing the work, to be implementing the strategies, to be taking the consistent action that are going to allow you to generate that work or those pieces of work at premium price points. Now, obviously, like I say, if you are thinking about implementing a proven process and you've been listening to the podcast either for a while or for a very short time, please do consider the C-suite over the summer. And the reason for that is that over the last, 5 years of running the C-suite and the incredible results that we've seen, some of which we've been able to share on the podcast in our epic case study episodes, I've told people consistently that you need to buy at the right time for you, which means buying before you are in that survivor state, right? So it means buying when you know you want to work on your sales skills, you want to hone your sales skills, you want to be signing clients predictably and repeatedly. You want to have a B2B sales process that works, that is efficient, that you don't have to think about, that you can scale using team members as and when you want to. If you are at that point where you feel that you want the additional support, that you want the additional accountability from the community, that you want proven processes, templates, and strategies that you can literally plug into your business, then now is the time to get on board. If you join the C-suite before August 31st, you are going to be able to learn exactly how to position yourself and create your corporate USP so that you stand out in a market that, always flits from being super noisy when all the B2C crowd realize that they need to generate corporate revenue pretty quickly. But it's going to do that for you for the long term. So you can position yourself as a premium brand, as a coach, a consultant, speaker, trainer, or done for you service provider, and stand out in a category of one so that corporate companies are paying you premium prices, coming to you for their work to be done. You'll also learn exactly how to generate leads in a way that feels good for you. I teach over 8 different types of lead generation inside the C-suite, and you get not only the strategies, but also the proven processes and templates for every single one. So if you're somebody who loves networking, there's a strategy for that. And if you're somebody like me who would rather sit at their desk shoving Jaffa cakes into their mouth than go to an event and have to put on actual clothes, then maybe cold email. Our cold email strategy might be a good fit for you. And those lead generation methods are all easily measurable, replicable, and can be scaled to a team member. So over time, you won't even have to do it yourself if you don't want to. Not to mention understanding how to hold profitable sales calls, having the ability to generate those premium sales on call number 1, rather than having to have 3 or 4 calls to get to a sale. Feeling good about the way that you're selling and being able to sell consultatively, challenging stakeholders when their beliefs or diagnostic skills have gone a little bit awry, and learn how to create and price your corporate offer, obviously with offer benchmarking and types contained, so you don't even really have to think too much about what it is that you want to sell. Now, if you do join before August 31st, there are a few benefits and bonuses. So obviously you will get 12 months of hot seats, group hot seat sessions directly with me each month. You will also, if you join before August 31st, get access to our September in-person day. We have a very limited number of spots for that September in-person day. So if you do decide to join before August 31st, you will get to come and hang out with me in London. I'll be running a C-suite only in-person day, and that will all be about leveraging Q4. So you will be implementing with other C-suite participants. You will be learning some very key strategies to take you into 2025 and really maximize the final quarter of the year. And you'll also get access to my proven summer plan as well. If you're somebody who takes time off normally during the holidays and then stresses when you get back in September because you've got lots of catching up to do, I have a proven summer plan that our participants have used every single year that takes about an hour a week, 2 hours if you've got the time, to get you completely sorted for September. You come back to sales, to business development calls booked, to successful lead generation, qualification activities that have resulted in those calls and in those sales moving forward. And there is a secret bonus if you join before August 31st. I won't be revealing that probably until the end of July. But there is a very, very cool secret bonus that is there for anybody who joins before August 31st. If you want to message me, then I might be in a good mood and tell you what it is early, but I won't be announcing it publicly until probably the end of July, so that I can get my house unpacked and all of that important stuff rather than worrying about promoting things on the internet. So yeah, we are where we are. It's been fab spending some time with you today. If you have enjoyed this episode, please reach out. Let me know what your key breakthroughs were. And I will see you in our upcoming summer episodes. Over the summer, we will be remaining at our once every fortnight or bi-weekly for my friends across the pond episodes. That won't change. But we've got some great episodes coming up. We've got some case study episodes where people are breaking down exactly how they've used strategies that I've given them to add multiple thousands in revenue to their bottom line. We've got some really cool episodes coming up on the trends that I've noticed this year, the things that are currently working and the things that are no longer working in the B2B sales world. And I've also got some interesting episodes coming up on really specific sales psychology to do with corporate sales as well. So there's lots and lots to get your teeth into this summer on dog walks or whenever you've got that time to have a quick listen and improve your sales. I'll see you soon.